Welcome home, my friends, to our Torah studying community. Our Sedra this week is EKEV, Deuteronomy 7, verse 12 and following. Last week I shared with you my pain over the sudden and catastrophic illness that befell my friend and teacher, Rabbi Peter Noble. And this week I can only say, Baruch Dayan HaEmet. Peter's teachings, his incisive sense of humor, his devotion to Reform Jewish prayer, his personal humility, and his absolute commitment to the well-being of the state of Israel will continue to guide and to nourish me, even though he no longer is present. Along with the loss of a great teacher, as a people, as Jews, we have also experienced an agonizing moment this week in America's public square. Now, I've never had a dog as a personal companion. I am a cat person by choice. But I do know what a dog whistle is. A dog whistle is a training device that makes a sound so high-pitched that only dogs can hear it. A trained dog will respond in an appropriate fashion to a particular ultrasonic tone. When the dog hears that sound, even if no humans in the area can hear it, the dog knows precisely what kind of behavior is expected. Now, Professor Google tells me that, quote, dog whistle politics is political messaging employing coded language that appears to mean one thing to the general population, but has an additional, different, or more specific resonance for a targeted subgroup, close quote. We all can think of well-known political dog whistles. When someone starts talking about states' rights, it's highly likely that the focus at that conversation will be institutionalized racism. Welfare queen, another dog whistle. A picture of three wealthy Jewish supporters of a particular candidate doesn't need words to spell out Jewish conspiracy for the intended message to be conveyed to the target audience. When someone accuses a large majority of Jewish voters in America of being disloyal, as occurred this week, that's a classical political dog whistle. There's nothing new here. Jews have been accused of not being loyal to the countries of their citizenship for many, many centuries. But please note, those accused of using classic anti-Semitic tropes will always deny that that was their intention. But that's the insidious danger of dog whistles in politics. So dog whistles have to be challenged on the very day that they are used and every time that they are used. They must not be allowed to float in the air as if they were benign autumn leaves blowing in a gentle wind. Dog whistles are never benign. Dog whistles are cruelly effective political weapons, and this particular one from this week needs to be called out for what it is: blatant, intentional anti-Semitism. Okay, EKEV, our text. We read the Shabbat, and I quote, "And now, O Israel, what does the Eternal your God demand of you? To love and to serve the Eternal your God with all of your heart and soul, to uphold the cause of the orphan and the widow, to befriend the stranger, providing food and clothing, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt," close quote. Now, as the moment of Moses' death draws near, he tries to lay out a picture of what we call a chevra mofet, an exemplary society. The only kind of society that would be appropriate for people living in the land of divine promise. There needs to be a functioning judiciary, a moral military, and an economy that embraces the needs of the poor and the powerless. Pinchas Peli points to a passage in the Babylonian Talmud which asserts that the injunction to love the stranger, to treat the stranger with both justice and mercy, occurs no fewer than 36 times in the Bible. And there's even an alternate reading of the text that says 42 times. That's a lot, wouldn't you agree? There's an obvious concern in the Bible for what is going on in Israelite society. It's reasonable to believe that xenophobia and fear and hatred of the other was all too common in ancient Israelite society. Let's face it, you don't keep repeating an ethical demand unless that ethical demand is being studiously ignored. The Israelites had once been slaves, but now, when they will be exercising sovereignty in their own land, it will be all too easy to enjoy the fruits of that power by trampling upon the rights and the needs of others. The later prophets realized that essentially Jews were no better than anybody else. When the slave becomes a king, then all ethical bets are off. Rashi and Ibn Ezra go with this in different ways. Rashi points to a verse in Exodus that says, "For you know the heart of a stranger, seeing that you were strangers in Egypt." You know the heart of the stranger. You know what it feels like to be marginalized. You know what it feels like to be ostracized. You know what it feels like to be barred from the room of decision-making while your personal fate is being discussed. You know what it feels like not to have fluency in the language of your nation, your new homeland. You know what it's like to be mocked because of the clothing you wear or the foods you prefer. My father knew what it was like to be standing as a non-English speaking teenager before the uniformed bureaucrats handling immigration at Ellis Island. He didn't know his birthday on the secular calendar. He knew it on the Hebrew calendar. So he was assigned by these benign individuals December 25th as his birthday. He had a long name, Davidowski. So his name became David. No one asked. He was carrying with him the terror of having been caught up in the battles of the Russian Revolution. So he feared the uniformed authorities in front of him. He couldn't bring himself to challenge anything. He was a powerless, voiceless refugee who had traveled across an ocean in steerage by himself. So later on, when Dad became an American citizen, he would always cast his vote for those who promised to be responsive to the needs of the stranger. He knew the heart of a stranger because in his heart, he always felt himself to be somewhat of a stranger, even to the last day of his life. Ibn Ezra says that what happens to the stranger is that no one seems to be hearing their cries. Their pain doesn't seem to have any impact on the homeborn. The strangers aren't voiceless, but the dominant population is deaf. Eyes have they, but they do not see. Ears have they, but they do not hear. In a self-consciously blind and deaf world, the stranger is lost, powerless, despairing. Nachmanides, Ramban, added a deeply troubling reminder that even as a slave can become a king, the time may come when that king once again can become a slave. So we must build a society that cares for the stranger not only because of our memories, but because of the twists and turns and ironies of history. That Chever Mofet, that exemplary society, should be our lodestar, our unfailing guide in the darkest of nights. The Israelites did not manage to create such a society, though they tried. Our Sedra wants to know whether we, in our time, can do any better. Well, that's it for today. Be wary of dog whistles and find productive and compassionate ways to respond to the 36 or 42 times that the Bible calls out to us to care for the powerless strangers in our midst. Oh, while you're at it, please hit share, and then have a wonderful weekend. Shabbat Shalom.